Hello, and welcome back to Chasing Masculinity. Today's episode, I sit down with Brett McCracken, who is an author and senior editor and director at the Gospel Coalition, and we explore how men can pursue depth, clarity, and discernment in a culture that is driven by information and distraction. We talk about his personal journey, the formation of his ideas, and the challenges facing modern men, and what it actually looks like to build wisdom in a digital age. If you're serious about growing in maturity and learning how to think clearly in a noisy world, this conversation is going to sharpen you. So, with that, let's get into it. Brett McCracken, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Colton. It's great to be here.
A few years ago, you published a book in 2021 called The Wisdom Pyramid. And I believe that this was based on something that you did in the late 2010s. And now I've read this book a few times now, and I genuinely think it is one of the most influential books that a Christian could read in the modern era with all the political, partisan, polarized climate going around.
Yeah.
In fact, a mentor of mine had said that this book was one that he likes to read every 1 to 2 years as a sort of
Yeah.
realignment tool.
Yeah.
And this is a very wise person, so I take his advice very seriously.
Wow, that's awesome.
Now, this book was published I think right around the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a world that I think it was right before it was a world that nosedived into polarity and just this us versus them ideology.
Yeah.
And it was right before transgenderism and sex changes took off. It was
hmm
right before the weekly protests, it seems like.
mm
Yet it seemed to have been written
mm
for Christians that were already in the world experiencing this. It's
Yeah.
like you were forecasting exactly what was needed right
mm
before it was.
mm
And I'm just as I'm rereading this,
mm
reread the Wisdom Pyramid a few months ago now,
mm
and it seemed like it was written for just this exact time. Like it was
mm.
perfectly timed for the world that we're currently in,
Yeah.
compared to when I first read this in 2022, which I thought the same thing then.
hmm
It just seems to only become more relevant. So I got to ask, what was the catalyst? What
mm
was the thing that caused you to write the Wisdom Pyramid? How could you predict all this?
mm Yeah, that's encouraging to hear that. I hear comments like that a lot, like, oh, this book is so timely and speaks so much to our cultural moment. And it's funny because when I wrote it, I remember thinking like I want this to be my most timeless book. Like I don't want it to be super bound to any particular cultural moment. I want to address kind of some of the technological dynamics, but I want the prescription, the actual like wisdom pyramid, kind of the levels of the wisdom pyramid to be timeless, to be kind of something that is useful and orients people towards health and wisdom in 2020, 2030, 2050, and beyond. So I think that's part of what makes it feel so fresh and relevant is it's rooted in actually pretty timeless ideas about where we go for truth and kind of biblical wisdom. But to answer your question about like the specific occasion for coming up with this, it was actually a talk I was being asked to give in 2017 for Humble Beasts Canvas conference up in Portland. Um, they asked me to give like a TED talk, like a short talk on the topic true joy in a fake news world. So I was like, okay, that's an interesting topic. How do I go about addressing this in like a 12-minute talk? So I don't know why I kind of landed here, but I came up with the idea of like, what if I took the food pyramid and made like a wisdom pyramid out of it. Because when I think about true joy in a fake news world, how do we like find balance and groundedness? And how do we flourish in this crazy information environment where there's fake news and there's, post-truth um, everywhere. We don't know what to trust. I just kept going back to just like it's about our intakes. It's about what we fill our mind and our soul with.
Hmm.
Are we orienting our intakes around healthy sources? That is what is going to be the path to joy in a fake news world. So I basically like just conceived of the original iteration of the wisdom pyramid like on the back of a napkin, literally. Like I just kind of drew it out and I was like, the Bible has to be at the bottom. I know that for a fact. I think I want the church as like the next level up, and then nature, and then so on and so forth. And I sent like a picture. I took a picture of it of the napkin and sent it to like a graphic designer friend. And I was like, hey, any chance you can like make this look like something presentable for a conference I'm speaking at? And so he did. So my friend Jeremy, he designed the original, like the OG wisdom pyramid, which is different than the one that you see on the book cover now, but you can find it online if you search. But I used his image, this like nice looking kind of colorful pyramid, wisdom pyramid. I used it in that talk, and it was kind of like a hit from the beginning. Like people like gave me so much encouragement and positive feedback. Like everyone in the audience like took out their phone and took a picture of like the screen when the wisdom pyramid was up on the screen as I was talking. So I don't think anyone remembered like anything I said over the 12 minutes of that talk, but they remembered the wisdom pyramid. So I knew right then like this is actually like a sticky concept. Like people seem to really be helped by this idea of equating our information intakes in the digital world with what the food pyramid was trying to do, with food. So it was like about a year or two after that conference when I started kind of mapping out like a book proposal around the wisdom pyramid, and one thing led to another, and I got the book published with Crossway, and it came out in 2021. So that's kind of the quick story of how it came about. But yeah, I've been really pleased with how well received the book has been. It's definitely my most successful book that I've written. It's been, it's like a big hit in Brazil, like the Portuguese version. Like every day on social media, I get like a DM from someone in Brazil, like, wow, this book is like, amazing. So that's cool. It seems like a topic that like is so universal in because the internet and digital culture is everywhere. It's not just like American culture, it's everywhere in the world. So, and it's a visual that can translate, across cultures. So, yeah, so it's been a really fun ride with this book.
I do love the cover.
Yeah.
It is so captivating. And I saw,
Mm.
I think it was a blog post you wrote a few years before the book was published, and it had a different graphic on it. So I
Yeah.
assume that that's closer to the original.
That's
But it
that's
just
the original one that my friend Jeremy designed. Yeah.
and that one looks much more like the food pyramid we all grew
Yes.
up. That
Yes.
was conceptualized in, I believe, was the 80s.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's
and
changed recently, by the way.
it it has changed, and I didn't know this.
Hmm.
Slight tangent. I'm I'm very much into fitness and nutrition, and so I grew up in the mid 2000s in the Midwest,
Yeah.
learning about the food pyramid. I didn't realize that I think it was in the early 2000s. It was debunked and removed from curriculum.
Yeah.
But I still taught it, and everyone I
Yeah.
talked to was also taught it, and they were
Yeah.
surprised even now. Before the whole food pyramid was flipped on upside down,
Right.
um,
Right.
I would still talk about this. It was I found out a few years ago. It was like the food pyramid
Right.
was a scam from the beginning,
Yeah.
and it was debunked, and it's not supposed to be taught. And people are like, no, the food pyramid. I still
We
abide
all
by
remember
that.
it.
What do you
Yeah.
mean? It's so memorable, that
So
graphic
memorable.
was.
Yeah.
But I do love whatever that 3D version is with
Yeah. Yeah.
it looks like it's a pyramid with an actual
Yeah.
3D pyramid with um like depth to it. That is such a captivating image. So I can certainly see how that would permeate languages very well.
Yeah.
It
Let's just say
translates.
I hope the wisdom pyramid has more staying power than the food pyramid because with wisdom, I hope that we don't kind of reevaluate the priorities in 10 years and the way that the food pyramid has been reevaluated.
You
It,
don't want to flip the wisdom
yeah.
pyramid on its head.
No, no. But it is funny, like, and this is a tangent, but I do think the way that in 20 years or 30 years we can so radically alter our scientific kind of consensus on nutrition, it just shows you that like the follow the science approach isn't actually all that trustworthy because science is so fickle and it's always changing. And even on the transgenderism thing, like you're starting to see like the scientific establishment is like backing off of it now. Like even though for 10 or so years, like scientists were like supportive of it and like, yeah, this is great. Let's change people's hormones and like do surgeries. And now you're seeing that, being debunked. So it's just a good argument for like timeless wisdom, right? This is why Christians need to be steeped in like biblical truth and wisdom that can ground them when everything else in culture, including like scientific theories and the official narratives on things, ebb and flow and are always changing, right? So and I'm a fan of science. I don't want to come across as like bashing all of science, but it's a man created kind of thing, and that's subject to a lot of faults and, problems.
Especially since a lot of science is cultural science, at
Yeah,
least the mainstream stuff.
yeah,
But
for sure.
people who aren't intrinsically involved in educational institutions that aren't really in depth, we're
Yes.
only seeing the side that permeates to the rest of culture, which isn't probably a whole lot. So it's deeply susceptible to culture and cultural
Yeah.
norms and societal
Yeah.
tendencies, which means it sways a lot. So I think,
Yes.
you swing hard in one direction and then we swing hard to correct.
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of that as well, which
Yep.
is the opposite of being steeped in
Yes.
an immovable wisdom or ideas that can't be so moved.
Yep.
So I'm curious what so you've written several books. You've been an author before the Wisdom Pyramid, and I know you have some more works coming out as well. But what started you on this path
Hmm.
of, I guess, not just seeking wisdom, but authorship in general, or pursuing, um, I would say, a more grounded approach to literature than the maybe more swaying science that we're talking about?
Yeah. 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 I mean, my journey as a writer and an author kind of began in college. I went to Wheaton College and I was like very involved in the student newspaper. And I just kind of loved cultural analysis. That was kind of like the genre that I was like writing from the very beginning. And my whole career has been writing freelance, and then now I'm a full-time editor for the Gospel Coalition. But my focus area has always kind of been helping Christians navigate the culture with wisdom, right? With discernment, with care, not being so afraid of the culture or hostile to the culture that we just kind of like hide in a bubble over here, like separate from the culture. I'm always, I've always been one who's more encouraging of a dialogue with culture and kind of a fruitful conversation. But at the same time, and I've seen from experience in my own life, there's a lot of danger that comes with that when you get a little bit too friendly with what's happening in secular culture, the arts, whatever. You can become very persuaded by those narratives, and there's some harm that can come. So I always say if you're a Christian who cares about the arts, who likes to have conversations in the cultural realm, you just have to go into it with biblical wisdom. You have to be steeped in that kind of immovable truth of God's word. And if you are, I think it frees you up to be able to um, go kind of tread in fearsome places in culture a little, like go places where a lesser person, a weaker Christian might be very susceptible. But if you're like a biblically steeped, biblically wise Christian, I think you can engage in culture sometimes in ways that um, are a bit more daring, I guess. But I even say that with a little bit of caution because I would say I'm 43 now. I've been a Christian my whole life. I'm very biblically literate, and yet I still struggle with like there's some realms of pop culture that I don't like to kind of touch because I know it's not going to be edifying for me. So I
Mm,
think part of maturity is actually knowing that there should be lines, with how you engage with culture as a Christian. Some things are just off limits and not super helpful. But all that to say, that's kind of been my burden as a writer, with articles over the years, and then with my books, is really just helping Christians be um, wise, faithful, grounded in truth in a culture that is ever changing and full of falsehoods, the post-truth culture that we live in. That's the subtitle of the Wisdom Pyramid, is feeding your soul in a post-truth
hmm.
world. So that's kind of my big picture kind of goal as a writer. And it's been fun to explore different facets of that umbrella idea. So like one of my books, Uncomfortable, is all about the local church and why it's kind of that second layer of the wisdom pyramid, like the importance of the local church for your flourishing as a Christian. Um, is like one deep dive into that, and yet I bring in kind of cultural analysis even in that book, talking about how consumerism is like the air we breathe in contemporary Western culture, and we start to bring that consumeristic mindset to church, and we start to expect that church should just meet us where we're at and give us what we need and kind of scratch our itch. And uncomfortable is basically like, no, 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 no. Like the church is not something you should shop for, like you shop for a pair of jeans, It's not a product that needs to compete in like the marketplace of other products. It's something categorically different, and we need to approach it with a higher tolerance for being stretched and pushed in uncomfortable places. It's not consumer friendly. That's kind of the thesis of uncomfortable. But yeah, as a writer, I've always just tried to look at the landscape of culture, like what is going on right now that is hindering Christian flourishing and Christian witness and Christian wisdom, and how can I write in a way that hopefully um, brings that to light and guides people towards health. So the Wisdom Pyramid was certainly that, and then the new book that I just co-edited, Scrolling Ourselves to Death, is doing that with kind of specific analysis of uh, smartphones and social media technology. So yeah, that's a little bit of why I do what I do and what I hope to accomplish as a writer.
I love that you're addressing the idea of church shopping because this is something that my opinion has changed on over the years. When we were talking, you came to speak at a church a few
Yeah.
years ago, a church in California that I used to attend. We found that by my wife and I found that by church shopping,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it was an amazing church. Thankfully, we landed in a really good spot. We had gone to several other churches before. We just weren't feeling it. We landed there. It was amazing. We had an amazing family that brought us in. We learned a lot.
Yeah.
We went through our marital counseling there before we got married. It was amazing. But
Yeah.
we church shopped, and then we moved to when we moved to Colorado. We did the same thing. We
Yeah.
we church shopped. um, the very first church we went to, we were locked in. We It was amazing, biblically sound, and an amazing community, and we have not gone to another
That's
truly.
great.
And we're very involved, and it's been great. And it wasn't, but we had intended to church shop
Yeah.
essentially, and we get a lot of new young people who come in and um, first time and say, oh, how like you new to the area, and like, oh yeah, we're shopping for churches.
Yeah.
And it used to be something that I thought, yeah, that's what you do because you want to find a biblically sound church.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of churches where they will, a lot of people can call a lot of establishments can call themselves a church,
Yeah.
and even some more biblically sound churches, maybe they're only doing topical sermons, or they're only there to preach a modern message. They're not there to teach true sound scripture. And so church shopping sounds like something a smart Christian would do. Oh, I
Yeah.
want to make sure that where I'm going is true to the gospel, true to the Bible. But what happens, I think, more than not, is at least it was for me too, is I want to find a place where I'm
Yeah.
comfortable,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is a big reason why you've titled your book such. I want to find a place that's not going to ask too much of me, that's not going to make me feel too uncomfortable in my own skin and the sin I'm living out. I don't want a church that makes me feel bad for not giving more or for not helping out more, volunteering more, right?
Yeah.
But it's those type of environments where we grow.
Yeah.
So as I've been put in those positions, I realized, no, this is church shopping. If you're doing it the way I think a lot of people are,
Yeah.
is finding a place that allows you to be you, which sounds like such a modern cultural message.
It fits you. We use that language of like, is it a good fit for me?
Yeah.
Which is what consumerism is all about. Like, find that product that is a good fit for you. Literally, if you're shopping for jeans, it's like, is it a good fit on me? But that's why I think the term church shopping should be retired. Like, I personally call it church searching. Like, I'm searching for a new church because even that linguistic change, it takes it out of the category of consumerism, like, which I just think it reduces the church to something that it really isn't. It's not just a product for your consumption. And yet it's telling that church shopping, I think, is so commonly used, and we don't bat an eye when we talk about like, yeah, we're shopping for a new church. It just shows how much the approach that we take to church really is that of a consumer looking for the perfect experience for me, the perfect fit for me.
Yeah, I agree. I guess on that, because now that I've switched sides. Now I'm anti-church shopping in that sense, right? Finding something that
Hmm.
fits me rather than finding something that's true and is going to
Yeah.
push me, develop me, what have you. Um, how do you approach that with people? If somebody who is maybe they've been in their faith for a few months, maybe it's just a couple years, younger person says, "Oh, I'm church shopping." They walk up
Yeah.
to your service and say that. How would you
Hmm.
approach or navigate even that language being used?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I probably wouldn't like chastise them for like, I wouldn't like immediately jump to like, you shouldn't use that term because blah 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 blah. Like, I think it's just an honest mistake, if you want to call it a mistake. It's just the term that people use when they're searching for a church. So I don't begrudge people for using a term that has just unfortunately become the dominant term. But I mean, I would probably like disciple them over time to basically, you know, to not sell my church on them, because selling a church is just playing into the whole consumer marketplace idea. I would just encourage them like, hey, when you're looking for a church, like, here are some things that I think are important to look for. Like, uh is Jesus kind of the center? Is the gospel preached? Is the Bible kind of a focus of the preaching? Are people being changed? Do you notice that there are lives being changed in this church? People are growing. It's not just a static kind of country club community where no one is ever being changed. So I would probably talk to them about like some of the values that they should consider when they're looking for a church, and not try to oversell them on this particular church. Just be welcoming to them. And something that we do at our church that I actually think is really effective is we have a saying that's called Stick Six, and it's basically, we encourage you, if you're visiting for the first time, to visit 6 times before you decide, because
Hmm.
you can't ever really tell what a church community is like with a one-off visit, because for a variety of reasons, you're not going to get the full picture. But if you try it out for like 6 weeks and you know, you're going to make a more informed decision. So, and I think that even prodding people to do that kind of shakes them out of this church shopping mentality a little bit, where they're maybe going into it expecting to go to like a different church every week during their like search for a new church. And I don't know that that's the healthiest approach anyways. Like I think it's probably better to like try a church, and if you like it, you know, decently enough on the first time, like go the next week and keep going until you have a reason not to. Um, just it sounds like that was your approach, you know, with the church in Colorado. You went to one. It was it was good, you know, and you didn't have to look anywhere else. And I think that's ideal, honestly. Like in uncomfortable, I have a line that I partially regret saying because it was maybe overstated a little bit, but I say something like, you know, when you're looking for a new church, just like find the nearest non-heretical church within a stone's throw and like go there, you know? Like and I was kind of being facetious, but also, you know, it doesn't have to be that much more complicated, you know.
Yeah.
Find a church that's close to you that you don't have to drive, you know, 30 minutes to go to. And as long as they're like orthodox in their theology and they get the basics right, um, I think it's a church where God can grow you, right? That we forget that like the church is God's work, right? It's the Holy Spirit that is doing everything in the church. It doesn't really depend on the talent of the pastors or the like beauty of the building or the, you know, the polish of the children's ministry. Like from a consumer standpoint, maybe that matters, but in terms of your life being changed, like God can do that anywhere. And as long as it's a church where like the people there are their hearts are in the right place. They want to be used by God. They serve with a glad heart. They are eager to grow. God does amazing things, right? And I think we overcomplicate church sometimes, and it doesn't need to be that complicated. It's really just about you having the right posture when you go there, of being eager to grow and being part of a community that is similarly, you know, has the same posture where collectively we want to become more like Jesus together. And
Yeah.
if you have that posture, I think the Lord is like eager to do good works through us.
You mentioned something a little bit ago about how there's a balance between being a Christian, specifically you being a Christian writer, and navigating the culture of society and the issues and walking that line.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably something that every modern Christian is also wrestling with.
Yeah.
Because as much as I think everyone wants to pack up and go live on a farm 1,000 miles away from
Hmm.
anybody else, at
Hmm.
the same time, we have to be around others. And that's also how evangelism works too,
Yeah.
right? As much as you don't want to live in an area where maybe there's a lot of sin, that might be the area where you have to be.
Yeah.
Um, so I was thinking of Lot, picking his
Mhm.
tent and putting it next to Sodom,
Yeah.
and about how over time, by the time God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, he was no longer next to Sodom. He had no longer pitched his tent outside the gates. He was in the city, um, and that's where they had to go into Sodom to essentially save him,
Yeah.
because he walked the line and eventually
Mhm.
became part of the culture, if you will. He says it was still an upright, godly man, but he was
Yes.
a part of Sodom. Now he was in the city gates.
Yeah.
How would you give advice to the modern Christian man who's like, okay, I have to live here.
Yeah.
I have to live in San Francisco and work
Yeah.
or wherever, or I have to
Mm-hmm.
engage with culture. There's no way around it.
Hmm.
I have to have I don't say I have to have, but like I have social media.
Yeah.
Um, I have to have a smartphone for
Hmm.
modern day existing.
Hmm.
How do you navigate the
Mm,
walking the line, like you said,
yeah,
between I'm grounded, but I also can't not engage with
yeah,
a culture that rejects Jesus.
yeah. Yeah, wow. Yeah, this is a big question, and it's a question that I think every Christian, you know, should, give a lot of thought to and have kind of constantly in the back of their mind because the you're getting at the in the world but not of the world tension, right? Like
Mm,
mission mission has always, since the first century church, it's always involved this tension between wanting to be countercultural and have a countercultural witness where we can speak prophetically into the culture, but also like being close enough in proximity to that, pagan culture or that unreached culture that we can have relationships and we can be like invited in and kind of not just like force our way into that culture. But it's so tricky because I think another dynamic that has always been true in Christian missions is anytime you go as a Christian into a hostile environment, an environment that's more secular or more
mm,
pagan
mm.
than it is Christian, there's always going to be a risk that that culture and the power and the inertia of it, the formation of it, is going to overtake you and change you more than you change it, right? Like, say you're like and I've seen this story play out, but like, you know, say you're like a 20 something, like eager church planter, you went to seminary, you like are so on fire, and you want to plant a church in like a very secular city, let's say Portland, Oregon, or like Berkeley or something, and maybe Boulder, closer to where you live and you go in and you're like, I'm gonna like plant like this cool church and it's actually gonna like be like this like flag of truth in this like culture of like hedonism. But sadly I've seen it happen so many times that that eagerness and that enthusiasm over time is overtaken by the cultural formational power of the place. And the pastor, the church planter, ends up kind of acculturating so much in the name of mission, right? In the name of trying to bring Jesus to these people, that he is ends up kind of losing himself and losing his credibility. So I think we have to just be real. We have to just be realistic and not naive about these dynamics because they are real. Like this is why I wrote the wisdom pyramid. This is why I'm constantly preaching about like the intakes, the things that feed your soul really matter because we live in this culture where if you don't do anything intentionally about your intakes, like you will be formed by toxic sources. Like that's just the default in our culture. Like unless you are willingly choosing otherwise, like you are going to be formed in a non-Christian direction. Um, so you have to be very intentional about choosing better sources. Um, so for practical advice to like the young Christian man in terms of how can you set yourself up for success? Let's say if you move to a San Francisco or a Portland, I just had this conversation with a 22-year-old guy that I'm mentoring right now because he wants to potentially move to LA to work in the film industry, and I was cautioning him about like, if you do that, you just have to recognize that your faith is just going to be even more of an outlier in that culture. And you are going to have to really be intentional about cultivating a healthy faith because it's not going to be a priority for most of the people you associate with. So the first thing I talk about, and I told him, is find a good church. Like that is like the first thing that you can do to set yourself up for success. Like you have to be plugged in to a Bible believing, Jesus exalting church that is transforming lives, and you need to not only go to that church on Sunday, but really involve yourself deeply in the church, form a community. that is going to be a major source of like foundation for you to stand strong in kind of the new culture that you're in. I also think just making sure that your friends, like your closest like friends, you have like some solid Christian brothers in that group because we are so formed in life by our community. And you can like be raised in a Christian family. You can even like go to a Christian college and you can be around like Christian community. And then the minute that changes, let's say you like move to a new city and you don't find a church and you start to just like make close friends with your coworkers at like a secular, you know, tech startup or something, like if that becomes your primary community and they're not Jesus loving, kind of biblically wise people, you are going to be changed. Like in spite of all that has formed you up until that point, the power of relationships cannot be overstated in terms of how it forms us. God made us that way. He made us to be um, not just autonomous individuals who like determine their own identity in isolation. Like our identity and our passions in life and our beliefs in life are formed so much by our community. And so a church hopefully the church leads to number two, which is a tight-knit community of people who love you and know you, who have shared values, who love Jesus, who want you to be more like Jesus. I think those are the two biggest things I would say. And apart from that, it's just the basics of Christian discipleship. Like be in the Word of God, make that a priority. Make God's Word the functional foundation of your personal wisdom pyramid. Be drawing from nature and God's creation and be healthy and like be kind of uh, someone who is kind of attuned to the fact that God created us with bodies and senses, and the internet is kind of just like a very um, distorting field of vision compared to like what we can experience and sense with our own kind of God-given bodies. So what that tends to mean, I think, is a focus on the local, like, and this goes along with like the church and your local community. It's all connected, but I think you're going to set yourself up for success if you're rooted in the tangible local place that you are more than you are like lost in the internet kind of cyberspace rabbit
Hmm.
trail. Like that is a quick path to confusion, destruction, addiction of various sorts. Like if you are a highly online person, let's especially if you're like a single 20 something guy and you spend a ton of time on your phone and online, that does not lead to healthy places. Um, so I would say be as much analog as you can be, like set a time and a place for using your phone, maybe even social media, but have it be a very kind of small piece of your pie, right? That's why in the wisdom pyramid, the phone is like the dessert category. It's like it's fine to like have it be there. Like you can have a brownie every now and then and not, die. But if you make it the staple of your diet, it's going to be really bad for you. And unsurprisingly, and this is a whole other podcast, Colton, but young men in today's culture there's a litany of issues happening right now, and a lot of it stems from overexposure to online life. The more time, and it goes for young women as well in different ways, but the
Hmm.
more time young men spend online on whether it's, in the manosphere, podcast, YouTube, or kind of darker corners of like Reddit and Discord and et cetera, it's just not forming them in healthy ways because God created us to be formed as embodied beings with people in our life who can know us in the flesh, who we can like go out to coffee with and actually have a heart to heart in a way that we can't just posture ourselves behind avatars, so I really encourage everyone to just like focus on those analog, tangible things, the church, local community, where God has placed you. And I think you'll find that you'll flourish more. You'll be happier. Like you will be able to like exist in the way God created you to exist as a man in a particular place in the world who is known and being shaped and influenced by a particular set of people who you are influencing as well. And ideally, that is in the context of a local church. And it's a simple recipe, but that's kind of the advice that I just keep giving to young men. Less time online, more time in tangible, kind of embodied relationships, particularly in the context of the church.
I think a portion of this comes from, so this is something that I think every man struggles with, the idea of stoicism.
Yeah.
Stoicism used to be really intrinsically linked to masculinity. To be a man, you're more stoic, and men have a proclivity to be more stoic than the feminine counterpart. I think that's just a part of the nature, and that can be embraced healthily. But it it's something that I think used to be embraced really heavily. Was the more stoic you are, the more masculine you are. And this is
Mhm.
something that I used to struggle with. I very much do still, and I think a lot of men do. Some of it just it's innate and it's not recognizable,
Mhm.
or it's too big of a mountain to climb to alleviate it, or they think it is positive. They think that is masculine,
Yeah.
and this drive to online culture, to always being on your phone,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like you're with people.
Yeah.
You're getting the people you need people, even the most antisocial people on the planet, the hardened criminals. Social isolation is considered the extreme punishment. Even the most antisocial people on the planet are punished by being in
Yeah.
complete isolation. So we need something. So this idea of I'm a stoic man, I don't need all of these friends. I don't need to go in depth with people in real life, but you're
Mhm.
still getting just enough of an IV drip from the online world, from
Yeah.
tweet interactions,
Yeah.
or from gaming with your I say gaming with your friends is maybe different if you're actually interacting, but to the level of online interaction where you're just getting enough to stay sane, but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like you're interacting. You still feel like you're stoic. And
Yes.
so it's an outlet to not go insane, but to keep your stoicism. So
Mhm.
I think there's probably some level of
Mhm.
stoicism within masculinity is driving people to be online because it alleviates the need to have to be with people around you.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's really insightful. I think you're right that like I think the stoic tendency for men is probably behind a lot of their online kind of behavior, and then maybe choosing that because you can control more, right? Like your online interactions are a bit more controllable. They maybe come with less of an emotional cost, and you can just kind of like keep doing your thing, keep being productive with your relationships like tightly controlled in these like ways, but it does kind of still scratch that relational itch just enough. And I think women, interestingly, I think they maybe don't have stoicism as the driver of this, but like they also have social needs and kind of the online world provides something that is maybe uh, less scary and less intense than the vulnerability of kind of physicality in the real world and the exposure of that and having to kind of always look pretty and put together and whatnot. The online world maybe provides a different sort of safe haven for women, but I think they're related a little bit as well. But yeah, I think the revival of Stoicism, by the way, in the last 10 to 15 years is fascinating to me. Like, through the different bloggers, the Ryan Holiday and his books and Jordan Peterson a little bit and just the kind of the fact that Marcus Aurelius is like on the bestseller list again, you know, thousands of years later. It's fascinating. I don't know what you think of that, what your theories are behind that, but it does feel like there's a crisis of meaning for contemporary men where there's some sort of missing purpose and meaning that men are trying to recover. And maybe that classical kind of stoicism from, ancient Rome is somehow scratching that itch for finding kind of a direction and a path to health in a world that just frankly has disregarded men and demonized them and made them really feel like, what am I here for? What
Yeah.
what is being a man for in this world? And maybe stoicism is part of the recovery process of that identity. But I
I
think
think
for
it goes
Christian,
back to the
yeah,
swinging of
yeah, totally. Pendulum
you
swinging.
overcorrect because
Yes,
something's been lost. I think masculinity has been on a decline since probably
yes,
the 60s, but
yeah.
the past couple decades
Hmm.
there's been a blatant act to eradicate it. Masculinity has been demonized.
It's
And so
toxic.
I think this is maybe the overcorrection to
Yeah.
take back lost ground. Um,
Yes.
and again, it's really intoxicating, and there are a lot of positive attributes of stoicism. Like I think Ryan Holiday's work
Hmm.
on Marcus Aurelius is there's a lot of really positive things you can take from that. But I think it's the same with anybody. If you take anybody's complete ideology,
Right.
anything out of scripture, I think if you pull that and say 100% this is what I will do,
Yeah.
you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure because it is at the end of the day work of men.
Yes. Yeah. And I think one of the downsides that I see with like the kind of stoicism online community manosphere thing is it kind of takes the place of the like real embodied community that is actually what men need, like
Yeah.
more than just this like online tribe of like Ryan Holiday, Jordan Peterson, influencers, and other men who kind of like them and, listen to their podcast. And whatever community that is being created online, it's not going to be as good as like the kind of band of brothers in your local church that you can like meet with early in the morning in the way that like church men's groups love to do, like 6 a.m., like Bible study, like before work. Like that is the sweet sauce of your formation as a man. Like other men who know you, who see into your life in a more 360 way.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson is preaching in a one-way direction to like the manosphere. He doesn't know the actual circumstances of these men, but your local church pastor, he does know a little bit of your circumstances, and you can actually like know that he can speak wisdom to you as a man that is informed by a little bit more than just what he would say to anyone, right? He is speaking to you individually, and that's especially true of like a small group or like a more tight-knit kind of group of guys that you might be able to form in your local church. I just can't say enough about the importance of that, and I know that it's kind of common sense and maybe even like there's kind of like stereotypes about like, men's accountability groups and all of that at church, but they're stereotypes for a reason because it's a tried and true kind of method for discipleship and formation is that embodied community of men who can like sharpen each other and know each other deeply and love each other in a way that like I feel like men need. They need to be loved by other men in a brotherly way. And that just is so countercultural. Like you don't, apart from like comedies, called like I Love You Man or whatever, like where we joke about that, like the awkwardness of like bromance. It's actually like it's an important thing to like find in your life. And it's a hard thing to find in your life. And I don't want to say it's easy, but the church again, it all goes back to the importance of the local church. Like if you commit yourself to a local church, I think you will be able to cultivate some meaningful relationships with other men, and you'll find that that's like a major just kind of anchor in your life to keep you grounded and to keep your life on track. Because your wife can't give that to you, your kids can't give that to you, your coworkers can't give that to you, especially if they're not believers. And I'm preaching to myself here too. I'm a busy dad of four. I have a full-time job. I don't have a lot of margin in my life, and I always have to remind myself like I need to keep prioritizing like male friendship, because it is so important and it is something that is so undervalued culturally these days that you can easily kind of just go about your life without that being a part of it. But I think it's so important because the online tribes and formation is not forming you in a good direction in large part. And you need that tangible in-person community. And I will stop there because I've been rambling for a long
No,
time
you
now,
are you
Colton.
are preaching to the choir here. I'm on board with everything. And my question, I'm a part of like I love podcasts, I love listening, I love taking in all this knowledge. But my question to the people who are in the manosphere is like, okay, you've great taken all this information. Um, Hopefully you're not in your little,
Mhm.
isolation bubble echo chamber.
Yeah,
But okay, you're taking information. What are you doing with that? Is that
yeah,
where you're staying? Is that just scratching the itch where you feel like this is how I take back my masculinity?
yeah,
Is I listen to X podcaster or YouTuber?
yeah.
Or are you actually going to do something with it? And that's why I feel like people who are on the way end of the extremes, like your Andrew Tate's, right?
Mhm.
People really attached onto that because they felt like that was enough. Associating with that, taking in
Yeah,
that information, maybe you agree with some of it, maybe you don't agree with all of it, but you're just like, yeah, taking back masculinity. And then that's enough. And it doesn't actually tangibly affect your life because you're not doing anything with it. And so people don't like the moderates because, moderation doesn't sell. The
Mhm.
extremes sell.
True. Yeah,
That's what news is, right? Is that's what's going to sell seats.
yeah.
But the moderate is where tangibility exists. You can take something and do something with it.
That's
So if you're taking in all this information, but your life hasn't changed,
yeah,
it may feel like I'm taking back the masculine, I'm a man, manhood, but you're not doing anything. Your life's not changing.
yeah,
Whereas if you actually take tangible steps, that inevitably will lead to brotherhood.
yeah, yeah.
Unless you go down the complete stoic monk mode rabbit hole,
Right,
which will
right.
probably, you'll
Not
probably
advisable.
not advisable. If you go down that road, you're probably going to end up turning right back around and realizing, no, you need a community around you.
Yeah,
And it's going to be a hard lesson to learn. But
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're going to end back up at, I need brothers around me.
Yeah. Which again, it's like it's not something new for our cultural moment. This is timeless truth. This has always been true, right? And I think more than what you can find influencers and podcasters saying about like what it means to be a true man in 2025, like you should really just look to history and look to like your godly grandfather and the godly men in the past. Like, what did they do in their life? Like, what can I learn from them? Like, what are the things that have not really changed much over time in terms of healthy manhood? That's what we should be thinking about, which is why I'm a big fan of just like men being very oriented around history and kind of
Mm-hmm.
tradition and not being so enamored with the now. Everything in our culture is like hyper focused on the now, right? And even like the nature of social media, it's like what's trending now? What's today's topic of debate, that's trending? And there's just diminishing returns of wisdom when you focus your attention on kind of the conversation everyone is like flipping out about now. Instead, I would rather give my limited attention to like reading a book about manhood that was written 50 years ago, or like, Kent Hughes's great book, Disciplines of a Godly Man, I think it's called, like,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a classic, and it's not because he was reinventing anything. It was because he was like just kind of mining the depths of like tradition and so yeah, I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to kind of collectively push our brothers towards kind of the continuity of like manhood over time. Yes, there are some unique contours of like being a man in today's culture. Like there's unique challenges, I think, online pornography, like kind of just online over involvement in general, kind of everything we've been talking about is a unique new challenge, but it's really just an expression of things that have always been temptations for men. Sexual sin has always been a temptation for men.
Yes.
It just takes a different form today. Kind of being involved in kind of things that are not really in your domain of control or your sphere of influence, but being kind of like a looky-loo, um, whether it's the news or being a news junkie or kind of being like so obsessed with sports, watching sports that you don't actually like you're not present with your kids, you know, like you're watching the NFL all day on Sunday when you're like 8-year-old son is like, Daddy, I want to like play catch with you. Can you go play catch with me? Like that's kind of today, the version of that is like, Daddy, like get off your phone, like play with me. Like you're on Twitter too much. Like, and it's like, yes, like men always struggle, I think, and have always struggled with like being present with the sphere of influence right in their own backyard that is the primary thing that they are called to because there's this world of interest and intrigue, and spectacle and entertainment that is out there that can be such a distraction. So yeah, I think there's new dimensions, but they're kind of old problems that have always faced men. So the solutions, I think, are more timeless than we think they are. And it's just kind of everything that I'm talking about with the wisdom pyramid. Like the wisdom that we need is more eternal than ephemeral. There's more continuity with it than there
Hmm.
is ingenuity, or innovation. It's just kind of old wisdom for new times.
Did you see the new Jumanji movie, the remake that they did?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
So the opening scene is I just thought of this because I was about to say the exact same thing about sin. Sin is timeless. It's just new ways to
Yeah,
manifest itself.
yeah.
It opens with the Jumanji board game being discovered, right? You
Hmm.
have the Jumanji board game, you start playing it, you can't, you know, you open up Pandora's box until you finish.
Yes.
But he looks, and it's based in the '90s, I think, and it's a board game. And he's like, I don't play with the board game.
Yeah.
Puts it away. He wakes up the next morning, and the game has magically transformed itself into a video game.
Oh,
This is the
fun.
'90s,
Yeah.
so video
Yeah, yeah.
games are. And now he plugs in right away and plays it, and that's what
Yeah.
opens up.
Okay.
That's the opening scene for the
Yeah.
remake. And I
Yeah.
thought that's sin. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah. It just
temptation.
adapts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
that's so
going
true.
back is certainly
Hmm.
the timeless principles. So this is there's a new concept that I've been thinking of or I've been wrestling with. I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Hmm.
Um, it's it's kind of going back to you're talking about the idea of using these timeless principles, going back and finding these things that have been staples to fix what really aren't modern problems. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, if that's going to your dad for advice, but you
Yeah.
think throughout your entire teenagers, maybe even 20s, 30s, your dad or your grandpa, you're like, that's outdated. I'm better. I'm moving on. Like this is the new era. That's the old way of thinking. Why would you think that? And then
Yeah.
you're sitting there years later, like, wow, he was right.
He was right. Yeah. Dear old dad was
so,
right all along.
so it's the idea of
Hmm.
if what am I what lessons am I going to learn in my 40s and
Hmm.
how can I learn them in my 20s?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what are the lessons that I'm going to learn in my 40s? How can I learn those in my 20s?
Hmm.
And trying to pull that in
Hmm. Yeah.
to hopefully recognize, hey, maybe your dad was right all along
Yeah.
before it's too late.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think that is good. That's a good approach that every guy in their 20s should try to take. Like think ahead to the type of kind of wisdom that you will hopefully have in your 40s and how can you like fast track that in your 20s. Like one specific example that I've been telling this kid that I'm mentoring because I see this happen a lot with guys in their 20s where the pendulum kind of swing problem is really, it's especially a problem for younger guys because when you're in your 20s, I think you're just prone. It's the season of life when you're separating from your family of origin and you're kind of forging ahead in your own path. And so there's this sense of like, I want to like do things very differently than the way I grew up. And I want to like swing to the other extreme. And even with like Christians, I find, let's say you grew up as a very sheltered Christian, you went to like a Christian college. I often see this pendulum where there's like a wild streak that like the the Christian college graduate like just goes all in on like worldliness and drinking alcohol and like starts smoking cigars and blah blah blah. I get it. Like, I get that, like, this is a natural thing, kind of like rebellion and swinging the pendulum. But trust me, like, when you are in your 30s and 40s, you'll look back on that and kind of grimace a little bit. Like, oh, like, that was just kind of embarrassing that I was so recklessly swinging the pendulum because the older you get, the more you see, like you just said, Colton, like actually like your parents and like your family was a lot wiser than you gave them credit for. And the way you were formed was actually like good. And you want to kind of retain things more than you want to rebel against things. It's not to say that there's no good that can come from kind of uh, blazing a new trail in some respects than
Yeah.
where you came from.
It feels very virtuous when you do it.
It feels very virtuous. But the thing that comes with age is you start to see, was that really virtuous or was that more just my youthful rebellion and my kind of like my wanting to distinguish myself from the culture I was a part of? Even like kind of a current thing where I think you see this manifest with young men is this trend of like growing up non-denominational evangelical, but then in your 20s you like become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox or like, some sort of like very different Christian tradition. And it's like you go through this cycle of like you discover it on YouTube and you discover all the like Eastern Orthodox YouTube influencers and you're like, where was this my whole life? How come no one told me about this? And I just see that pendulum swing all the time. And you should just always question yourself whenever you find yourself on a path that feels like an extreme reaction to something that came before.
Yeah.
I think in those moments, like wisdom often looks like slow down, kind of like rethink your motivations for doing this, and also like make an effort to have more continuity in your life. I think in general, we are healthier when there's a little bit more continuity in our life from season to season, rather than these wild swings from like this to this to this to this. That's not a recipe for growth. And this is something I make the point of about this in Uncomfortable when it comes to a local church. And it's a simple point, but like if you are always hopping from church to church, like you go all in with this church for like a year, and then you like gradually become disenchanted with it for one reason or another, and then you find a new church and you're like super involved with the new church, but that only lasts like a year or two. And then you get in this cycle of like kind of hopping around from church to church. And the thing is, you're never growing because true growth requires continuity, like
Hmm.
being planted in a static environment for a long enough period of time that you can actually put down roots and bear fruit. And it's basic agriculture, right? Like if you transplant a crop like every year, it's not going to do good things for the harvest, right? You need to be in the same soil for a long enough time for there to be like substantial growth. So all of that to say, the wisdom that comes with age is the recognition that this kind of volatile pattern of pendulum swinging and hopping around and like reacting against this and that is not going to serve you well. Like, try to kind of temper your reactionary nature and focus on a little bit more durability and longevity in any given like place that God has you. It's like Eugene Peterson in his book, The Long Obedience in the Same Direction. I love that. I love that title because it speaks to what healthy Christian discipleship is. It's a long obedience in the same direction. You just kind of press forward. There's continuity. There may be moments where it feels like there's a few detours or like it's like two steps forward, one step back, but it's still a long obedience in the same direction. If you want to be a healthy man, if you want to be a healthy disciple, you have to have a long view and you have to be able to kind of have grit and just like stick with things longer than you might think that you have the toleration for. And that's where, like, honestly, some of the Stoicism stuff can be helpful because I do think Stoicism has that sensibility about it. Like, you just kind of have to grit your teeth sometimes and just do the
Yeah.
work. And like the only way out is through, that idea. And I think there's some wisdom to that because we live in a really fickle age with a very low threshold for throwing in the towel, right? And it's kind of the way the internet has formed us. Like you swipe left, swipe right, like X out, delete, unfollow. It's like the minute something becomes uncomfortable, we can just like it be gone with it on our phone. But that's not how life works. Like when life starts to get a little bit complicated and difficult, the way that you grow is actually by leaning in and pressing on and trusting that there's something on the other side of this obstacle that is going to form you and actually propel you forward in a healthier way.
Yeah. Yeah. Community can't exist in just a season of life.
No, no, it really can't.
Yeah.
I've tried that. Done like I did like a semester abroad a few times during college. It's like made some great friends, but they were friends for like 4 months and then they were gone out of my
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever something my wife and I are talking and something happens and we're like, "Oh, like we have to do this." Like, "Oh no, this thing happened or this person did this or whatever." It's like, "Oh, we have to jump now." And
Yeah.
looking back, it's like how many times can we say we made a wise decision from a
Mhm.
jerk reaction? Almost
Yeah.
never.
That's rare. Yeah.
Not once.
Yes.
Sometimes. And you get mad at people. You get mad at your church elders, or you get mad at people in your life who would just have more
Mhm.
wisdom. You bring something up and you're like, why aren't we doing this? This is the most important thing right now. It's
Yeah.
crucial we do this. And
Yeah.
they just take it real slow. And
Yes.
they and they're letting it ride out and they're thinking through and it's like, well, now the moment's passed. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, that's kind of the point. If you're jerk reacting everything,
Yeah.
I don't know how much growth you're going to get out of that, but there's a desire to, especially I think for a lot of probably a lot more type A people, but type A men, right? We're fixers. We want to do things logical. I'm an engineer, so I'm very
Mm.
logically oriented in it.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, problem, solution.
Yeah.
And it feels good. It feels good when you pursue that.
Yes.
It feels good when you can say, a problem came up. I'm a problem solver. I'm going to knock this one out of the park, and we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And you can close that book. But um, there's a lot of things in life
Hmm.
that don't operate like that, and it feels
Yeah.
like there's an idea of unteachable lessons that I
Mm.
love. And I heard it first from Chris Williamson, who's a huge podcaster, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he says that there's a few unteachable lessons in life, like money won't make you happy, money won't bring happiness. So it's one of those things where you hear it all the time, but until you go through it,
You have
like
to
you're like,
experience
oh,
it.
I can be different. Like I no money will break. Trust me, this thing will make me happy.
I'll be
Like
the exception to that.
I will be the only exception.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like something comes up and you want a quick jerk reaction to it.
Mhm.
It's almost like an unteachable lesson, but it happens every time. And it's only in the hindsight going back, like I should have taken a little bit more
Yeah.
of a breath with that one.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it feels like the theme of this conversation, like so much is about like we need to embrace the timeless over the timely. Like
Yes.
so much in our culture puts the emphasis on the timely and like what's the new thing? What's the like new trend everyone is doing? Like we need to get on board with that. We need to kind of constantly pivot and like in order to optimize myself, I have to like do this new like wellness hack or whatever. Like but actually, like the basics of human flourishing have not changed all that much, and the basics of biblical wisdom have not changed all that much, and we're going to be better served by being very literate in that wisdom, the timeless wisdom, than we are adept at knowing what all the current like rages are. Like what are the current like obsessions on, the wellness circuit of like online influencers. My next book is about sleep, and I'm kind of like making this point a little bit. Like, here's something that humans have always done. Every animal known to science sleeps, has some variation of sleep, but it's such a basic thing that we don't really think much about it. But like, maybe we should think more about it because God, in his wisdom, created us to sleep a third of our lives. Like, he created his whole creation to be defined by the need to sleep. And there's all sorts of like constant like science about optimize your health this way and do this and this supplement and this. But like it's interesting that science, the scientific take on sleep increasingly is like this is the single best thing any of us can do for our health is like sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. And it's an example of like it's the basics, like do what we were created to do. Like it's not rocket science. It's not reinventing the wheel. Like God created us to flourish by doing this basic thing, right? And so you can try to hack your health with all the latest advice, and maybe some of that is helpful, but like the food pyramid, I bet it's going to change in like 10 years. It's going to be the opposite advice. You know, drink red wine for your heart health. Don't drink red wine for your heart health. Eat a lot of red meat for your overall health. Don't eat too much red meat. Like that sort of advice comes and goes.
Yeah.
But it's like the biblical wisdom, which I would include in that the wisdom of general revelation. So scripture is God's special revelation, but he created the world, right? Like the world of our bodies, the way he created our bodies, the way he created the earth and the way that it spins and the circadian rhythms of night and day, like there's a revelation there that we can learn from that's like that hasn't changed since the beginning of since Genesis 1 when he created the heavens and the earth. And I think that we just need to remember that that's what is going to serve us well in life when we spend more of our time contemplating the unchangeable things, the permanent things, the things that are wired into the way God made the world, the things that he revealed to us in scripture. Um, and yeah, and it's what the wisdom pyramid is trying to argue is like the more permanent things are where you need to spend more of your time. And as you go up in the wisdom pyramid, as you know, like it gets progressively more ephemeral. So like
Hmm.
the arts and beauty is like near the top. I'm a big fan of the arts, like I'm a big fan of beauty, but the fact is like trends come and go and like artists come and go and like there are only a handful of like truly timeless, enduring, works of art. And the internet and social media and now AI, it's so ephemeral. It's just like it's fast moving, it's constantly changing. It's not going to be a reliable source of wisdom. You need to look towards the more permanent sources of wisdom in order to stay grounded in this crazy fast moving world that we're in.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this because
Mhm.
everything you say, I have like 10 different tangents
Mhm.
I want to go on. But I want to be respectful of your time. So I have a few rapid fire questions I'd like
Oh,
to
great.
ask you.
I love them.
But as I was looking back on these, I realized that these are some very deep questions. So I apologize. So um,
Okay, rapid fire deep. That seems like
rap
an oxymoron.
yes, yes. So I apologize in advance, but I have a few I want to start with. First one, what is a book that every man should read besides the Bible?
Great question.
You're allowed to say your own too.
I'm not gonna say my own, but yeah, wow. I mean, honestly, like because I mentioned it already, The Long Obedience in the Same Direction by Eugene Peterson, I think is really helpful just for like orienting men on this kind of path of like endurance and like running the race faithfully. That is what discipleship looks like. So I would say that. The other one that comes to mind is like Knowing God by J.I. Packer, just as like a basic kind of theological kind of work of utter brilliance and timeless truth. I think you can't really do any worse than Knowing God by J.I. Packer.
Nice. What is the most overrated modern trend?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, it's kind of a big umbrella trend, but I would just say optimization,
Hmm.
like in terms of the way digital technology and smartphones enables us to kind of always be productive. Like you can bring your phone with you everywhere you go, like you can fill every gap in your day with doing something productive. Like when you're waiting in line at Starbucks for coffee, you can like write an email or like check your email. When you're sitting, at a bus stop waiting for the bus, you can use that time to listen to that podcast you've been meaning to listen to or catch up on text messages or Slack messages. And I just think there's a lot of folly in living a life that is so productivity oriented and so optimization oriented that we don't actually have any breathing room in our lives anymore to just be still and to just kind of have meandering daydreaming time, honestly. I think daydreaming is like a lost art in the digital age because we fill all of the time that we used to daydream with like digital media. So yeah, I would say that kind of phone-based constant productivity is overrated and actually it's counterproductive in many ways.
I think that is another hard lesson learned
Yeah.
is being involved so intrinsically with like the optimization route,
Yeah.
and just learning that it's okay to be bored.
It's okay to be bored and important to be bored, I would
Yeah.
argue. And it's honestly where the sweet stuff happens in our mental life, in our spiritual life, when there's no other distractions, there's no other tasks that our brain is like undertaking. I find that those are the moments where God speaks to me the most and where I feel where I can really commune with him and contemplate him. And so spiritually, I think it's a really important discipline to have unmediated time, unoptimized time in our life. So I'm a big fan of going on unmediated walks. So it's very hard because like when I go out to exercise or like go on a walk, what do I want to do? I want to put in my earbuds and like listen to a podcast because there's no end to the podcasts I want to listen to. So I have to really discipline myself to not do that, to like
Hmm.
actually go outside and go on a walk with no media, with nothing in my ears, and it gives me that precious time to just like be still for a few minutes with my thoughts. Now I'm still being productive. I'm getting steps in. My watch is telling me you're getting closer to 10,000 steps, good work. But so I'm still being productive, but there's no media that's like crowding my mind with ideas or input. I'm able to like just kind of pray and reflect, and that's a beautiful thing, and it's something that's less and less practiced in the digital world.
So, I mean, that's yeah. I have no words because that is I agree with that so much. I got two more for you. I'll say them both because they're related. What's one thing that men should eliminate immediately from their lives, and then one thing that men should add immediately?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, kind of going with what I just was talking about, I would say if you find that you are on your phone or on the internet, like literally from the beginning of your day when you wake up to the end, um, you need to eliminate that in the sense of like find an hour or 30 minutes. I would argue at the beginning of the day is great because you can, if the first thing you do when you wake up is like look at your phone, it just sets the tone for your life. It's basically like the terms and conditions of the smartphone is what is going to dictate my life and my day. So I would say stop that if you can. And I know some people can't with their work and their jobs. They have to kind of instantly like be aware. But you'd be surprised how doable it is, even if you think you have to check your email and you have to check your texts like first thing in the morning. You actually probably don't. Like you can get away with like 30 minutes at the beginning of your day where you don't look at your phone, you don't do anything on a device, and you actually just start your day as a old-fashioned embodied being. Eating breakfast with your family, maybe like reading your Bible reading for the day, sitting still and praying for a few minutes before you kind of get kind of cracking with your workday. That's something that I tried to institute in my life when the Wisdom Pyramid came out back in 2021. I was like, my wife Kira was like, you need to probably like practice what you're preaching in this book. So she was like, what are some specific habits that you can change in your life so that you're practicing what you're preaching? And that was the thing that I changed. I try my best to not look at my phone for the first like half hour of every day. And it's hard, and I don't do it every day. I'm not like perfect at this, but it's really been life-giving to try to be free from my phone at least for a few minutes at the beginning of every day. And then I would say at the end of the day, now, and especially now that I wrote a book on sleep and I did a lot of research into like sleep best practices, like looking at your phone and scrolling on your phone, like in the LED light right before you're going to bed is not advisable. Like it's kind of like one of the worst things you can do to like set yourself up for a bad night's sleep is to like scroll Twitter, in the final moments of waking life. So if you can like start your day and end your day not on the dictates of scrolling life, I think that's one thing every man would really benefit from.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brett, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Tell the people what you're currently working on and where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at the Gospel Coalition website. That's where I do the brunt of my article writing. So you can just look up Brett McCracken Gospel Coalition. You can see a lot of my most recent writings. But I have a new book coming out that I've mentioned a couple times. It's called The Wisdom of Sleep. It's coming out in August 4th. So I just announced it yesterday for the first time. I'm really excited about it. It's in a lot of ways it's an extension of what I was saying in the Wisdom Pyramid about kind of the timeless things, the permanent things being actually like a really fruitful source of wisdom in our digital kind of chaos that we live in. There's a lot of lessons, I think, sleep specifically and rest, Sabbath rest generally can really teach us about limits and humanity and, not being God, being God's creation, but not having the abilities that he has. There's a lot of wisdom in that, and sleep is a great teacher of that wisdom. So that's what the book is about and comes out in August.
I'm excited for that one. I will definitely be picking that one up. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure and a great conversation.
Yes, it has been. Thanks so much for having me, Colton, and keep up the good work.
I'll do what I can. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I will catch you guys in the next one. Before you go, I want to mention something briefly. If this podcast has been resonating with you, if the conversations around discipline, purpose, identity, and what it means to be a man today have been hitting close to home, then my book, 24 Rules of Masculinity, is officially out. It is a direct, practical guide built around the same principles we talk about here: biblical foundations, hard-earned lessons, and clear direction for men who want to live with intention instead of drifting. This isn't theory. It's meant to be picked up, applied, and just carried with you. So whether you're just starting to take ownership of your life or you're trying to realign and get it back on track, that's why I wrote it. You can find 24 Rules of Masculinity on Amazon or through the link in the description. If you do pick it up, I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.